Hello guys, how you doing? Henry here, back with another video. And today I've got the privilege and honor to be with Bishop Dave Basson, out here in Gordons Bay in the Western Cape, man, Atlantic seaboard. Man, an awesome time indeed. Bishop, thank you very much for joining me, man.
Thank you for coming to my hometown, man.
Awesome, man. So, man, you guys know that on this channel, my passion is to inspire you to reach your personal and career goals. And one of the ways that we do this is by interviewing, people like Bishop here, who've managed to found and establish successful organizations. And in his context here, being, church organizations for the past, how many years, Bishop, have you been planting churches?
We've been in the Cape now 16 years. Yeah, so it's been 16 years in church planting, but obviously we've been a lot longer in ministry and that sort of thing. But yeah, 16 years in Cape Town. We've planted 5 churches and it's still growing.
Awesome, man. It is still growing indeed, man. Kingdom Light Church, man, still growing.
Yeah.
Awesome time that, we're having here in the Western Cape, in a conference we're having here, Grace in the Marketplace conference. You guys should check out, Google Grace in the Marketplace, man. You get the strategies to win, in the marketplace. So, Bishop, man, as we said, man, thank you. We tried to do this in Joburg, the last time, and we had some issues with the sound.
Gremlins in the cupboard.
Yeah, but I mean, we say that, this is going to happen this year, right? I'm going to come down, to Cape Town, and we're definitely going to make this happen. So awesome, man. So yeah, Bishop, man, as we said, man, the point of this, man, is to inspire each other, to reach our goals. A lot of young people like myself, we want to, we got desires that we have, man, that we believe that God has put into our hearts. But one thing I realized that there's a way to do it. How did you do it? How did you sort of begin to walk in your purpose in terms of, planting these churches and stuff?
Well, it's interesting that the first point that Pastor Tafara put on the board last night in the conference was God is our source. And I think that was the first thing that I had to learn over many years. I had to come to a place of understanding that God is our source. Now, I mean, there are many different places of supply. If you think about reserve banks and gold mines and share markets, people put their trust in so many different things. But the place that you need to start is to make God your source.
Yeah.
So it's not my own strength, it's not my intelligence, it's God is my source. That was the first thing for me when I'd literally lost everything. I was restarting for about the 3rd time.
Okay.
And I found this book, and in the book, basically God spoke through the pages of the book. Whether those words were really there, he said, if you want what they've got, he's referring to successful men, you've got to do what they do. And I said, Lord, what do they do? And he said, they made me their source.
Okay.
So the first thing I'd say to any young person is make God your source, your supply, your origin, make that what you're about. And then after that, you start walking in the purposes of God. You start doing things that God teaches out of His Word. And you start applying the source, God's wisdom, God's initiative.
Yeah.
And He's actually not just given us, He's not just the source of money. He's the source of wisdom. He's the source of leading, which comes, principles that are coming out of His Word and what Jesus has done on the cross.
Okay.
And so, Jesus said it is finished. He completed everything. He's done everything that we require. So, God says, the Word says, God has given us everything that applies to life and godliness.
Yeah.
So we have it all. We've just got to make Him the source and then walk in His wisdom and His leading.
Yes.
And then it goes from there. It goes from there.
Oh wow, man, that's amazing. You know, just making God your source, and just like some practical lessons you learned, like in terms of, you know, organizations. Was I know, you know, if you're going to be running or like planting 5 churches or planting anything at all, you know, you're dealing with people, you're dealing with all sorts of things. You know, how did you find yourself increasing your capacity, you know, over the years, or over in terms of organizations and in leading and stuff?
Well, my story may be a little bit different than other people's. I know there are many different management skills and management styles, but I'd come out of a system whereby I had been misused, I'd been trampled, and because I had been hurt, as per se, by people that just saw me as a workhorse, as a donkey or whatever, I decided when I came out, I'm going to do things differently. I'm going to lead. When it came to the bad leadership I'd been under, I'm going to lead by example. And so my example was to, where other people had been shoving their work off on me and not being fair towards me, I decided I'm going to show people by example what it's like to do things the right way and to treat people the right way, which is once again, it's a biblical principle.
Yes.
God says to us, we have to love one another as we love ourselves. So my leadership style was one of leading by example.
Yes.
In other words, going out ahead and showing people what hard work looked like, showing people what commitment looked like, showing people what loyalty looked like,
Yes.
showing people what integrity looked like.
Yes.
And if they said, man, we like what you're doing, and we feel attracted to the way you're walking, then I'd say, okay, come and join me. And that was an organic process.
Yes.
Everything I learned was by organics, because I didn't know where I was going when it started off that way. I had to let God be my source, and then going forward, I had Him as my source, but I didn't know what was step 2, what was step 3 in my specific planting of churches.
Yes.
So it had to be an organic thing. It had to be a thing where step by step God was leading me. Now there's a scripture that says God is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. So taking the word as my lamp, taking the word as my light, I would step out and God would only, because I think He was teaching me like a faith walk, He would only give me enough light in His word for one step at a time.
Yes.
So I didn't, He said to me, don't worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about those things. Walk with me today. And so in every daily application, whatever came up, we'd handle together. And that was like a wisdom thing, was learning by what God was doing at that moment.
Wow, man, that's moving at the speed of the Holy Ghost, right?
The speed of the Spirit.
The speed of the Spirit, man. That's
led by the Spirit.
Led by the Spirit, man. I mean, that's awesome. That, you know, and I think one thing you're saying is that, you know, things don't, as you're saying, the light you were receiving was for one day at a time, step by step. So yeah, you might have those desires that you have, which are valid, because we know that, you know, our desires come from the Lord, right?
Yeah.
But the way to do it, you know, you need to do things step by step.
Yeah.
You know, pace yourself. You know, and I was also, you know, frustrated in the past that, you know, you've got these big things like, you know, I want to run my own business. I want to be in ministry. I want to do this and this. But the point is, the stage will come. Yeah. And you shouldn't go far ahead of it.
Yeah. As you say, you didn't know how. But He was saying, you know, if you stay faithful in the small things, I'll be there for you in the greater things. And because you stayed faithful in the smaller steps, step by step, God brought into season whatever you needed. And there's a scripture that keeps coming up in my head while we're sitting talking. His grace is sufficient for me. Paul praying about a certain problem in his life, and God saying, my grace is sufficient. The thorn was literally, a problem that he was facing that was buffeting him, and he prayed, but God was trying to teach him a dependency thing. He's saying, my ability upon your inability, the power to change, undeserved, is sufficient for you, because that's what grace is.
Yes.
So God's grace is a power. It's a sufficiency which is God's, which comes upon us when we're walking in that thing. And so you were trying to get into business and that sort of thing, and it was like a thorn in your flesh to you because you couldn't get it done. But God was saying to you, my grace, my ability, upon your inability to get to that place is sufficient. Just, son, walk in it. It's undeserved, walk in it. And so probably the next thing after he said, I'm your source, was to discover what it meant to be operating in grace and not in works. You know, I'm saved by grace and not by works. So there was this graciousness, which was God's ability. His manifold grace that we heard about a lot. There was this graciousness that God, and that brought me into a restfulness.
Yes.
That brought me into a restfulness where before I'd been punishing myself. It was all up to me. It was all on my responsibility. And so I was pushing and pushing and pushing, when at the end that wasn't what it was about. It wasn't up to me, it was up to him. He'd become my source, but then he'd also become my ability.
Wow.
You know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So, man, God is our source, and he also give you the ability,
Yeah.
the power
Yeah.
to actually do what you're supposed to do. And obviously, they're saying in due season, you know, that's when, you know, things will begin to happen.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, in due season at the end of the day. So now, Bishop, we find ourselves in lockdowns and all these things. We find ourselves in a supposed new normal, as people say. Things are a bit different. You know, some might have lost their jobs. Some business might have slowed down. Some paychecks have been slashed.
Yeah.
Where to from here? How have you handled challenges in the past? And I know you went to war, right?
Yeah, it's like, you know, the word of God is, the principles apply no matter what.
Yes.
So we're talking about God being our source. So when COVID comes and we're facing this stuff, does that change our source?
No, it doesn't.
You see, so it still remains. So the basic principles that you're learning in day one should never change in days ahead.
Yes.
He still remains our source. He still remains the one that we can trust to get through all of this. I believe that this reset, as they call it, is the greatest opportunity for us who are of faith to experience a new surge of His grace, a new surge of it, and the rising of the phoenix in Egyptian mythology is Christians have so many examples of God bringing His people out of captivity, out of slavery, out of whatever, into new beginnings. Our testimony as a child of God is a new beginning. We're born again.
Yes.
Our testimony as far as Jesus is concerned is He rose from the dead. He is the real phoenix. He is the real coming back. So God was sharing with me when lockdown started to sort of open up. We've already processed another couple of months down the road. But He was sharing with me the whole thing about beauty for ashes, oil of joy for mourning. In the midst of that kind of attack, you know, that we're facing, God gives us beauty for ashes.
Yes. Yes.
He gives us a new creation. So I'm not afraid, Him being my soul, I'm not afraid. You shouldn't be afraid. I know you aren't, but child of God shouldn't be afraid about where to from now, because my job is not my source.
Yes.
The economy is not my source. The payout is not my source. God is my source.
Yes.
And He is able to do things far exceedingly far above what we can ask or think. Now, just for example, there was a guy who was in restaurant business. He lost his restaurant. And he was sitting at home going, well, what do I do? And he happened to look, and I know there's been a couple of clips very similar to this on he was looking, and here was this camera lying on his desk. And he decided to take a few photos.
Yes.
And I was looking at this invite that he did for a lady in the church, and I'm going, what? Who took this photograph? And she told me the story that this guy had lost everything, picked up a camera, started a new business in the midst of lockdown, taking photographs. His passion had come out. And so here he was doing, far above what he could have even begin to think or ask, a new business in the midst of lockdown.
Wow.
Another couple was sharing their testimony with me now, just the other day. They had started up a business, they had business rights for it, but it was still in a very residential area. And so the man next door was like persecuting them, and he got them shut down because they didn't really have parking, and he persecuted the life out of them, and the municipality went along with his. And so they were given a time period of grace, and they had to move out of this small business, out of a double garage on a main street in a holiday resort, selling fresh fish and stuff. So they had to move and rent higher up in a much more expensive place. They have got now, 2-3 years down the line, they've got huge businesses.
Oh, wow.
And the lady said to me, she said, where would I have been if that man hadn't persecuted me? So through that persecution, through that have to shut down and move on, she looked at a situation that seemingly was bad. But if it hadn't been for that situation, she would never have moved.
Wow. Wow.
So whatever you're facing right now, who is watching this, don't look at where you're at as the ultimate roadblock to your career, roadblock to your dream. Joseph had to transition to be positioned to become the second most powerful man in the world under Pharaoh. And his brothers intended it for bad.
Yes.
But when God is your source, he said, but God said, I'm going to use it for good.
Wow.
Joseph's transition puts the Israelites in Egypt. And we go a whole 400 and something years because they get put into slavery. But when they leave Egypt, they leave with the greatest wealth transfer we've ever seen, almost in the history of man, and they plunder the richest nation in the world. But if they'd never been in Egypt, if Joseph had never moved in the first instance, God would never have been able to do that wealth transfer.
Yes.
So don't look at your situation as the ultimate bad news, but look at it as the opportunity to the greatest breakthrough you've ever faced.
Wow, man, that's amazing. And then as I've seen sometimes is that when you focus, too much on the bad, say, my situation never changed, but there's always something. I think God continues to show us that, there's always something at the end of the day. And, one thing I used to just think about is that, we've been hearing that there have been some countries which have been terrible, since the time I was born.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's still millionaires, new millionaires coming in those countries. Life is still, it's still going on.
Yeah.
And I like one thing you just said yesterday, that, when the darkness, seems to get grosser, His grace abounds even more.
Yeah.
God's grace abounds even
Yeah.
more, when things seem to be getting terrible and stuff like that.
But the thing is, where's your focus? Is your focus in the darkness? Is your focus on every conspiracy theory that's being preached right now?
Yeah.
Or is your focus on the light? And the focus on the light. I mean, we had a practical example setting up here this morning.
Yes.
The sun had not yet come up, and we could not get this camera to focus. This camera could not capture this beautiful day that we're trying to show you, sitting out here on the rocks in Gordons Bay. We could not focus that because the light had not yet come.
Yes.
But
yes.
once the light came, that camera focused, and we could sit here in utter sunshine and what's happening. So our focus cannot be darkness. Our focus has to be light, and God is light, and our source is light. You know, so we've got to focus on that. I mean, one of the greatest stories I heard, and not even a Christian story. It's one of the greatest millionaires that ever lived. He earned his millions in insurance in the Great Depression.
Oh, wow.
Now, how do you earn money that kind of way in the Great? He was on an upward spiral, and he was selling insurance, and he was doing well. Whatever type of insurance that was, I'm not sure, but he was doing well. And then one day, he picked up the newspaper, and he never used to read the newspaper, never ever. And that day, he read the newspaper, and for a period of like 3 months or something after that, there was just a downward spiral in his life. And so because he kept a book and he kept his diary and he kept his journal, he went back over the 3 months that the spiral to seek the possibility of where this downward spiral started. He traced it back, Henry, to the day that he picked up bad news and started reading it and making that his focus.
Wow, that was now like his compass, right?
Yeah, and so his compass became bad.
Sure.
He changed his mind right there, refocused
Yes.
to the light and not to the darkness, to the good news, not to the bad news. And his graph, his graphical climb picked up and went back in the right direction.
Man, that's amazing. I think, you know what, it's just saying that the focus is what is important, especially in these times. It's just the focus to say that.
For sure.
What am I looking at?
And what I think what COVID and lockdown and stuff has taught us is that it's actually forced us for it to become a daily walk, almost a moment-to-moment walk. We've got to be checking our compass and our focus on a daily basis, that we're not focusing on what the world, social media, negativity, politics would have us focus on, but keep our focus on our source. And he says of himself, he said, I am the Alpha,
Yes.
I am the Omega, I'm the beginning, I'm the end. You know, Alpha and Omega is Greek alphabet.
Yeah.
What he's actually saying, he says, I am the A, and I am the Z, and I am every letter in between. I'm the total alphabet.
Wow.
You know, so I am all of that and more. You know, so make me your focus, because I've got all the insight. The Hebrews 12 says, looking away from all that will distract unto Jesus, the author and the finisher of my faith. So we need to focus on the author and finisher of our faith, not on everything else. He says, looking away from sin and cares, that's so easy. Sin is missing the mark, and it's basically unbelief. Cares is worry, stress, and anything else that would be like that. So look away from that.
Yeah.
Look unto Jesus.
Wow. And I like what you're saying, that he's the A and the Z and everything else in between of your life.
Of your life.
Of your personal life. So each and every detail, whether there's a K, there's an L, there's an M there, each and every single detail, you know, he's concerned about that. Like, he's in it.
Yeah.
You know, he's the architect
He's
of
the architect. And what is the alphabet? The alphabet makes words.
Yeah.
And words make sentences. And sentences make books.
Yeah.
So if I'm making him my letters to my words, and my words to my sentences, and my sentences to the book that of my life that I'm writing,
Yes.
then he becomes the script.
Wow.
Which is the source. There's only one way from there.
Yeah. And
Success.
Success. And words are life, right?
Yeah.
So that's the very essence of life is words.
Yeah.
You know, and that's who God is.
Wow.
You know, to
I think
to
we've
us.
got a sermon coming here.
So that's it. And yeah, if you like change the words and putting the right words in your life, in your business, in your career, right now, you know, you'll be able to flourish, and you'll be able to prosper. You know, I think that's amazing. You know, at the end of the day,
the organics of what we're talking about, the stuff that goes up in our life and grows. The organics was I made him my source. As that progressed, he became the words to my life, which then became very important because I started listening to people. One of the things he taught me along the way was, if you want to change your scenery, you have to change your sound.
Wow.
So what did God do? God said and it was. God said and it was, and it was good. I had to learn to speak right. It wasn't just enough to make him my source. It wasn't just enough to believe that he could do it, but it was also to say the things he wanted me to say. Abraham was Abram, but God had to change the literal words in his mouth to become Abraham, which meant father of nations. To be able to receive the prophetic promise of a son, he had to call himself a father. Many people sit with prophetic word, and maybe this is a good place to sort of like round it off today. Many people are sitting with prophetic word, but what are they doing with that prophetic word?
Yeah.
The prophet is literally the postman. He delivers the letter and the message. But once you've received the letter, what do you do with the letter you've received? You have to put that letter up in front of you every single day, like Joseph telling his parents, like somebody. No matter what the circumstances, you need to say, God said, I'm headed for success.
Amen.
God said, I am his child. God said, I'm more than a conqueror. God said, he said, oh, I am. What do I tell the people who sent me? He said, tell him I am sent. I am who I am. Jesus comes to earth. He says, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. What is the word filled with? I am more than a conqueror. I am God's child. I am prospered by his love and his grace. And I need to say, Paul says, I am what I am by the grace of God. We need to confess our success. We're writing a book here. We're writing a book here.
Awesome, man. Awesome, Bishop, man. Guys, confess your success. And success, is readily available, to every child of God. Success is available, to all of us at the end of the day. That's the beginning and the end of it, the A to Z of everything. So, man, Bishop, thank you very much, man, for taking your time on this lovely, day. And, we've got a lot of things planned for today. But, man, thank you, man, for coming through bright and early so that, we can chat to the guys here. So, guys, thank you very much, for joining us. I love and appreciate you guys. And I thank you for all your support. And if you got value from this video, share this video right now. Subscribe, and let's grow together. Cheers.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome stuff. Cheers.